I'm getting ready to make a clay model of this cartoon character. The original picture I had of him was the one from the front, but I also needed to make a side view illustration because a three-dimensional model is seen from all sides. For example, his beak might appear flat from the front, but it really isn't flat. It sticks out like a cone shape, and I have to know that to make a model of him. Armature is a framework that supports something. You'll need armature for the head and the body. Then you need to plan what forms are needed for the other parts that you're going to be making. The first thing I'm going to do is make an armature for the head and the body. I'm using aluminum foil. I'm going to roll it up, and I'm going to make roughly the shape of the body and the head, a little bit smaller than what I want it to be because I'm going to put clay over it. The clay is going to be about a ½ inch thick, so it's going to add size all the way around. So I'm making a basic shape of the round head and a more oval shaped body with this aluminum foil. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger by adding another layer of aluminum foil over the first. And so I'm folding it in around and wadding it up like this. And I have a little excess that I'm not going to need to use. I'm forming it. I'm making a thin spot where the head and the neck are going to be. And I have this part here that I'm going to need to trim off. I have some scissors handy, so I'm going to trim off this extra. And then I'm going to fold this other, shape it, because his body is round. It's more of an oblong form, but it's still round. And his head is more of a spherical form, and it's round too. And there's a spot between the body and the head that would form the neck because it's more narrow. Okay, I have this excess aluminum foil that I've cut off, and I tore some more off. And I'm going to form that around the body as well. It'll add a little bit of size and make it a little bit smoother. And this is going to be a good armature to build my clay body on. Then I need to figure out what kind of forms I'm going to need to make for all the body parts. This is the shape of the armature that I just made, basically. And then I'm going to need to make a shape like this with my clay for his little wings. I'm not making these the exact size, I'm just figuring out what forms I'm going to need. Okay, his legs, if you look at them, they're like a cylindrical form. So I'm just going to draw two short little cylinders here, and those I'll be able to make by just rolling them, making a clay roll, rolling it up. And here's the other leg. And these are the forms that I'm going to use for the feet. Okay. Now the next thing I need to do is the beak, and that's going to be more like a form of a cone, kind of a short fat one. And then I have the other parts, the other details, the little cape or whatever it is he's wearing. I've got a shape like this that's in the front, kind of like a little collar or something. And then the shape of the cape itself, I'm trying to imagine what that's going to look like flattened out, because when I cut it out of the clay, before I actually form it around his body, I'm going to have to know what shape I need. So those are basically the forms I'm going to need. Here's another example. And so I'm going to make, again, the armature for his head and his body, but not his ears and his limbs, or his tail either. Those are going to be thin enough anyway in order to be able to dry evenly, but the body would be too thick if I don't have the armature inside of it. So I'm forming my aluminum foil, and his head's a little bit different than the one of the character I just did before it, because it's kind of bent over like that, kind of like a chin or something like he has. So this is the armature that I'll be using for him if I make him. Okay, there's the armature for his body, and I need to plan all the different pieces I'm going to need for him. So I'm sketching out the shape of his armature, the shape of his body, And with this one, I'll also make a side view because it's a little bit different because of the way his head kind of hangs over. And these are the shapes that I'm going to need for his ears. Remember, these are just sketches to plan. They're not really patterns. And I'm going to need two longer cylindrical forms for his arms. Those I would make by rolling. Okay, I'm going to draw those in there just to remind myself of what I need. And then for his little hands, I'm going to need a form like this, because then I can actually mold it the way I want it as far as his position goes. I'll draw another one over here too. So the next thing would be his legs. And with legs like that, you probably want to make them a little thicker than what they really are, because otherwise they're not going to have the strength. And then his feet, I need a little form like this. To make these kind of clay figures, you need to be able to break it up into different forms because you're making the forms separately and then joining them to the body. For the hat, it's going to start out like a circular form, like that, and then have a little point in the middle there. Okay, but from the side, it would look like this. So basically, I make a circular form and then I pinch that little thing up in the middle for the point. Okay, to make his tail, I'm also going to need a coil or a rope of clay that I roll. I'm going to make it more wide than the actual tail is, and probably not exactly the same as the actual tail, because if I do, it would be too fragile being made out of clay. So those are the pieces I would use for this character.